Hello! Today we're going to be talking about the Moon Elves. We're going to be talking about where they came from, where the ideas behind their culture originated, and how they came to be as they are now in the world of Sturil. Like the Forest Elves, the Moon Elves are the eldest of the Drukar races. They are the elder siblings of the Cave Elves, the Star Elves, the Blood Elves, and the Stone Elves. But beyond that, they are a very important and integral part of the world of Sturil. The idea for the Moon Elves was that of the Drow, or Drow, however you choose to pronounce it, the Dark Elves of the D&D worlds. The difference being, of course, that the Moon Elves do not live in the dark of the underground. They instead live on the surface world, and they're not all raging homicidal psychopaths. When the idea for the Moon Elves originated, it was that of a heavily matriarchal culture, but at the same time they were kind of generic, not very interesting people, beyond the fact that they were Drukar, and the ringleaders of the Drukar being the eldest. The changes that have occurred in the Moon Elves since then have made them a much more dynamic and interesting people, built along the idea of cooperation and the knowledge that everyone in the world has their own particular place. The biggest influences for the Moon Elves when it comes to culture are that of the Unshi, or the dark fairies, actually. Not only do they live in darkness, spending their daylight hours sleeping and their nighttime hours awake and active, but they also have a very strong tie to the animals of the world. So where the Forest Elves focus a lot on the flora of Sturil, you could make an argument that the Moon Elves focus a lot more on the fauna of Sturil, yet both are still very tied to the natural world. Unsurprisingly, the Moon Elves are another of those cultures in which my gamers often look at me and say, "What was that name again?" They've got really long, complicated names, much as the Forest Elves do. And in a similar vein, they're really all just made-up sounds thrown together to make it seem as if it's an Elvish name or language. The differences between the two, in my own mind, when I'm creating character names or creating words for the language, is that the Forest Elves focus a lot on L's and harder consonants in their excess, whereas the Moon Elves focus a lot on R's instead. Alaranora salvaneria, Soleil lunastania, Roneria valashira, Palamina and Poramanus, Lunastia, Asherin, Loriana, Eva Celeria Novalicia. The goddesses that the Moon Elves serve are those that are bound to time, gravity, and sound. As such, the warfare of the Moon Elves is very tied to those elements. They are a very mystical, magical people. They focus more on their capability to destroy through arcane means than through physical means. That is not to say that they have abandoned all physical arts of warfare. In fact, they are quite proficient in a number of them. But for their focus, it's all magical. When it comes to inspirations in the media, it's really hard to narrow down a solid example, because there are so few good examples of magic in film. Even the Harry Potter films, with all of their potential for magical incantations, resort to flinging light from wands. So it's really something that stretches the creativity of the players and the GMs of Surreal. I have personally not played a Moon Elf in Surreal as a player character. I've created a number of NPCs and even drawn out the design for their capital city, Trinity City, but I have not played a Moon Elf character as a player. There are other players who have played Moon Elf characters in Surreal. Abebe Boone, Reed Emerson, Carissa Emerson, even Colin Hindall played a Moon Elf very briefly. But I think the one that stands out to me the most is the longest running Moon Elf in Moon Elf culture that I've run, which is Abebe Boone's character, Jailandrea Oriella, who went through a couple of different arcs as a priestess of the moons, very heavily integrated into the culture, and a great way for me to explore, as the creator, the different aspects of Moon Elf culture and the different things that characterize them. As with all of the races, I do have some thanks to offer. The Moon Elves did come primarily from inside my own head. I don't have anyone who I can look to for a huge amount of inspiration for their culture. But I can thank the players that have helped me flesh out their culture by playing Moon Elf characters and by talking with me about Moon Elves outside of the games and inside of the games. And that list includes all of the people that have played Moon Elves. Abebe Boone, Reed Emerson, Carissa Emerson, but also Colin Hindall, who ran a campaign for me that touched on Trinity City and the culture of the Moon Elves. And so we had a nice few sit-down sessions where we talked about how culture works among the Moon Elves and how it differs from other matriarchal cultures in Surreal. As always, thanks for watching. Hope that you enjoyed this look into the creation of the Moon Elf culture in Surreal, and continue following along for more informational videos about Surreal.